Oculus was founded in 2012 by Palmer Luckey. In 2012, VR felt like it was decades away. To think that we could have our own VR headsets in just a few years felt too good to be true. Palmer Luckey was treated like a superhero by the gaming media. Luckey began working with industry legend John Carmack, and it only solidified his status. During fundraising, Palmer Luckey would claim that he wouldn't make a penny off of the Oculus project. He was quoted saying he wanted to think about the community first and not sell out to a large company. Just 2 years later, it was announced that Palmer Luckey had sold Oculus to Facebook for $2 billion. It didn't take long for Palmer Luckey to be called a sellout, with his prior claims about profit being brought into question. Palmer Luckey attempted to calm down his worried fan base by assuring them they would never need to use a Facebook account to use their Oculus products. This statement did not age well, as in just a few years, all Oculus headsets were tied to a Facebook account. Users that were banned on Facebook would be locked out of their headset. In early 2017, only 3 years after Palmer sold the company to Facebook, he was fired for somewhat unclear reasons. It's public consensus that Palmer Luckey was fired for his political leanings during the 2016 presidential election. Palmer himself claims this is what happened in interviews. However, many believe the true reason he was fired was due to the lawsuits that arose after the sale of Oculus to Facebook. ZeniMax, the parent company of John Carmack's studio id Software, claims that Palmer Luckey stole their intellectual property and sold it to Facebook for profit. John Carmack leaving id Software to join Oculus only made the situation worse. In the end, it was decided that despite not using any of ZeniMax's trade secrets, Oculus still owed ZeniMax $500 million because Palmer Luckey broke a non-disclosure agreement. Luckey was forced to pay $50 million of this himself. This was not the only lawsuit that arose from the sale of Oculus. Total Recall Technologies claims that Palmer Luckey was working at their company when he created the prototype that became the Oculus Rift. This lawsuit was originally thrown out in 2019, though it was brought back in 2021 to be thrown out again. While it is possible that Luckey was fired for his political views, it was more than likely one issue among many that led to him being canned. It's also possible Palmer wants to be remembered for his political views, rather than the lawsuits that claim he stole the idea that made him famous in the first place. Palmer Luckey has now made more money in the weapons sector than he ever has in VR, but he still finds time in interviews to speak negatively about the direction Meta has taken. One has to wonder if he regrets the choices he's made. Big Box VR was founded by Chia-Chin Lee and Gabe Brown. These guys have quite the introduction for themselves, name-dropping Valve, Microsoft, Disney, and Sony, and using a lot of business words that I don't quite understand, like venture-backed, ecosystem, and successful. These two met while developing a Facebook game called Marvel Avengers Alliance in 2012. Their first attempt at a VR game might have been great, but I have no idea because it's not for sale. This is actually quite common among these VR devs, because early virtual reality games were rough, and Oculus paid for a lot of these games so they could fill out their store. Big Box still advertises the 95% positive reviews on Steam for this game, despite the fact that no one can buy it or play it anymore. Big Box's next title, Population 1, would become a massive hit and is still the largest scale virtual reality battle royale. The shooting in Population 1 does feel a little clunky compared to other VR shooters. Instead, this game differentiates itself using the Vertical Combat System, or VCS, because sophisticated businessmen use sophisticated acronyms. After the massive success of Population 1, Oculus acquired Big Box Studios. The studio has received a $5 million investment, however they have not announced any new upcoming title. Ready at Dawn was founded in 2006 by former members of Naughty Dog and Blizzard Entertainment. The studio spent its first 9 years in existence creating PSP games. The first big shot for this studio came in 2014 when they released The Order 1886. The game was somewhat controversial at the time, with a lot of discussion around its performance. Ready at Dawn claimed to target 30 FPS to make the game feel more cinematic. This doesn't make much sense, but it was wise of the studio to not speak poorly about Sony's new hardware, due to the fact that The Order 1886 was a PlayStation exclusive on the new PS4. The order received average to below average reviews, with many claiming the game was short with little replay value. Ready at Dawn's next title, Deformers, would be shut down and taken off storefronts about a year after it was released. After releasing 2 below average titles, the studio needed to develop something that fans could latch onto, and Lone Echo was just that. Despite being a few years old now, Lone Echo is still one of the best looking virtual reality games. Ready at Dawn took the game's addicting zero-gravity movement and created multiplayer modes Echo Arena and Echo Combat. The game was so successful that they landed a deal at Oculus in 2020 and created Lone Echo 2 in 2021. Fans became outraged in 2023 when it was announced that all Echo multiplayer would be shutting down. Ready at Dawn claimed that they're only shutting down their old multiplayer games so that they could work on their new game. This doesn't make much sense. Given the studio's history, it seems more likely that they're protecting their parent company. It is highly likely that Echo Arena will be brought back with a new Lone Echo game on the Quest 3, forcing PC VR players and Quest 2 players to make the jump if they want to continue playing Echo Arena. Twisted Pixel was founded in 2006 by 3 people I can't find any information about. The studio spent its first 7 years developing Xbox 360 arcade games and mobile games before making the jump to virtual reality in 2017. Twisted Pixel has released 4 virtual reality games, but it seems like many of them suffer from early VR gimmicks. Twisted Pixel was acquired by Meta toward the end of 2022. Despite having over 50 employees, they have not announced a game or released a game in 4 years. In 2015, Dante Buckley created Downpour Studios with the idea of making a milsim virtual reality shooter. The studio's first title, Onward, is a massive success and is arguably one of the most realistic shooters in virtual reality. Although many fans of the game became outraged in 2020 when developers of the game drastically lowered the graphics in order to provide support for the Quest 2. Although the backlash was quite severe, any players they may have lost were quickly replaced by new Quest players as the game was exploding on mobile markets. Downpour Interactive was fully acquired by Facebook in 2021. And as of April 2023, the original creator who dropped out of college to create Onward has left the company. A lot can be said about the controversies surrounding Onward, but the developers are still working to update this game and still update the community on a monthly basis. There's also been official talk of Onward 2, which is one of the few Quest 3 exclusives that we know is currently being developed. Sanzaru Games was founded in 2006 and has spent most of its time as a developer creating side games for already well-known IPs. They've only developed 3 VR games, and 2 of them have been removed from the Meta store and can no longer be played. Their one available VR game, Asgard's Wrath, is an interpretation of God of War in VR. It's very interesting to see Sanzaru work on a game like this, considering they've worked on official God of War games in the past. They even have an extremely broken webpage advertising their God of War collection. Shortly after the release of Asgard's Wrath, Sanzaru was acquired by Meta. Armature Studio was founded in 2008 by 3 former developers for the Metroid Prime trilogy. Armature has spent most of its time as a studio porting completed games to other platforms. The only original IP this developer ever released before virtual reality was a game called Dead Star, which was shut down very quickly after its initial release. Armature has released 3 virtual reality games. I was pretty confused when trying to research Fail Factory because the store claims that the game came out in 2020. The game clearly came out in 2017, so something must have happened here. Sports Scramble is basically VR Wii Sports. Ironically, their most popular virtual reality game is another port. After the massive success of Resident Evil 4, Armature was acquired by Meta. Camouflaj was founded in 2011 by Metal Gear Solid 4 producer Ryan Payton. Camouflaj was first known for their mobile stealth game Republic, which was eventually ported to flat screen and VR. Their first virtual reality game, Iron Man, is known for having great movement despite lacking on level design. The game struggled when it first released as a PlayStation VR exclusive. After Camouflaj was purchased by Meta in November of 2022, Iron Man was released on the Quest and received much higher reviews. Within Unlimited is a digital fitness company founded by Chris Milk and Aaron Coblin in 2014. After the success of their VR fitness app, Supernatural, there was interest from Meta about acquiring the company. The Federal Trade Commission got involved, worried that Meta was creating a virtual reality fitness monopoly. The FTC was ultimately unsuccessful, and Within was acquired by Meta. Beat Saber was developed and designed by 3 people from Slovakia. I'm not going to butcher their names, you can read them here. The three partnered with a small indie game studio called Beat Games. Previously called Hyperbolic Magnetism, they released many small indie games and mobile games. They released Beat Saber into early access in 2018. The game instantly exploded in popularity. Offers from large companies began rolling in quick. Beat Games opted not to take these offers. Beat Saber developer and artist Jan Ilavsky even told the press that they'd turned down money, preferring to remain an independent studio. Though just a year and a half later, Beat Game was purchased by Facebook. It's unknown exactly how much the studio received from this deal, but it must have been quite a bit more than Jan was offered in 2018. Beat Saber continues to print money, with the developers frequently releasing new song packs from popular artists. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. If I got anything blatantly wrong, please leave a comment letting me know. I'm trying to get better at making videos in this style, so any advice helps.